After a decade-long hiatus, we return to a rivalry that produced the game of the century. What's changed in that time? Hi, I'm Adrian Muller, and this is episode 5 of the Cobsmacked Podcast. This is a Nebraska Football podcast where we cover the Huskers season and team news as it progresses throughout the year. Every video episode will be uploaded to YouTube, and the audio versions can be found on Apple, Google, or Spotify. We're going to do a preview of the Week 3 game versus the Oklahoma Sooners. It kicks off at 11 a.m. on Saturday. It'll be aired on Fox. It's supposed to be another hot and sunny day, even though the game starts at 11, and I believe the temperature in that time from 11 till probably the end of the game should be in the 80s. So it's not like it's going to be as hot as it was last week where it was hitting 100 on the field in Memorial Stadium. This has been a very big game as far as Nebraska fans and the Sooners fans go. And any fan of college football history, this was a big thing, a big rivalry back when these were both powerhouses. Now that we've kind of slipped down and the Sooners have remained up there, obviously, it's not so much talked about anymore, but it's still a big deal to the fan base here. I know scrolling through Twitter, they would talk about like what would be the biggest upset or what games are you really looking forward to watching this week. And Sooners and the Huskers game was not on hardly any of those lists, and I thought that was kind of a slight miscalculation. I feel like there's a large portion of the football fan base, college football fans, that would like to watch the game. Anyways, the Sooners are still in the Big 12. They do plan on to move to the SEC. I believe that they start that in 2025, but it could be as soon as next year. It depends on how the scheduling works out. Their head coach, Lincoln Riley, is in his 5th season. He replaced Bob Stoops, so he got a good program. It was kind of a great transition. There wasn't really any drop off there. He's gone 45-8 since being there. He has 4 Big 12 championships under his belt. They have won 6 in a row, even before him. During his time, they've had 3 playoff appearances. He's had 2 Heisman winners and 1 runner-up. Last year was Jalen Hurts. I believe he was a runner-up. Most people still think he could have walked away with that. And I do believe that him and Scott Frost are kind of on parallels. We talked about how since the game of the century, a lot has changed. But even in the last 10 years or 5 years since Lincoln Riley came in and Scott Frost came in, I believe that there's a ton of parallels in the program, both in Oklahoma versus Nebraska and Lincoln Riley compared to Scott Frost. There's a lot of parallels all over the place. They're like just red strings that you see pinned on the board. They've obviously gone 2 separate ways. Lincoln Riley's been very successful. He didn't have really a drop-off period that he's having to recover from. I'm not going to put all that on, Scott Frost saying that he's doing a full rebuild, which I believe he is. But Lincoln Riley's success is Lincoln Riley's success. He is an offensive genius. A lot of people thought Scott Frost was the same thing. But he is successful because he is successful, not because he got something handed to him. It's been sustained over the time he's been there. Going into the offense, that's his bread and butter. He runs an air raid offense. They average 330 passing yards a game and 200 rushing yards a game. That seems to be pretty consistent from the time he's gotten there. They are known as an offensive powerhouse. Defense, not so much. We'll get to that a little bit later. They do pass a lot. Like, you're not going to have an air raid offense without passing a lot, but they do have pretty consistently. They have good running backs to set up a run game, but that's only to help the passing game progress. You're not going to be able to pass all the time if they know you're going to pass all the time. So you still have to have the threat of having somebody take off from the line of scrimmage. Obviously, they are with the success that they have garnered with the 6 championships in a row, playoff appearances, Heisman winners. They're going to get a ton of recruits to go there. So they have a ton of talent. They have a lot of talent all over the field. And a lot of the guys that they recruit, we recruit as well. But I mean, if you had the choice to go somewhere where we're currently rebuilding, we haven't had much success lately, or go to a place where, I mean, there is very literally a chance that you could go play for a national championship any given year. And so that's something that we will be running into. But they have a lot of talented guys all over the field. Again, this year they have another Heisman candidate that preseason, he's a 6-1 odd favorite. I believe he is the highest ranked guy going to win the Heisman. He is the quarterback. He's a sophomore quarterback, Spencer Rattler. I know our QB coach kind of made a joke, like not even a joke. Like he thought it was funny that like that isn't that just such a great name for an Oklahoma quarterback, Rattler. I just got a kick at that. Like he genuinely found joy in that. But their sophomore quarterback, Spencer Rattler, he is, like I said, a preseason Heisman candidate. He is not fast, but they do mention his mobility, his dual threat. Watching him in some clips that I watched, the highlights and stuff, he wasn't fast. He wasn't Adrian Martinez where he's gonna rip off 70 yards on you. But he was able to get first downs, or he was able to scramble out of the pocket, and he does have an arm. I was very impressed with how quickly, how much of a line drive he throws, and how far, like he's just accurate. I believe he's throwing like at a 76.9% completion rate right now. He's only thrown 2 interceptions, and I believe both of those came in the first game. His rating right now is a 171.9, so comparing that to Adrian Martinez, which Adrian's going to be a little bit lower, but Adrian's is 162. So, I mean, it's not a crazy big difference, but they are 2 different quarterbacks. I was just very impressed with his arm. He was able to make deep throws easily. Like, they weren't like, wasn't putting everything into it, and he was dropping them where they needed to be. And they weren't like, when he needs to drop into a basket, he drops into a basket. But if he needs to get it there fast in tight coverage, he gets it there on a line. That's going to be something that our team's going to struggle with, I think. Or at the very least, be something that's going to be a shock at first, because he is probably the best quarterback we're going to play this season. Best quarterback we've played in a long time. Another notable player on the offensive side would be basically any of their wide receivers, but specifically Marvin Mims. He's another sophomore. Him and Spencer came in at the same time, and they have good chemistry. He's a target for Spencer a lot. He's fast. He's shifty. He finds ways to get open, and it seemed like a lot of them were on short passes. So whenever Rattler had to get rid of the ball quickly, Mims was finding his way across the middle, and he got the ball. And he makes plays after he catches it as well. But that goes for any of the wide receivers they have. Speed is a very big thing on the whole team on offensive and defensive side of the ball. So, I mean, there's dudes all over the field. I could pick any of the wide receivers that they have. Any of the wide receivers could have a big day. Mario Williams, their other wide receiver, he actually has the most receptions this year, but Marvin Mims has the most yards. He was making big plays after the catch. I don't think Mims is their deep guy. I believe that's probably more up to like a Jaden Knowles, but I don't think Jaden Knowles, he's a running back, I believe. But he has the longest catch of the season so far at 57 yards, but Mims has a 50-yarder as well. So I don't think Mims is their deep threat, but I believe he can get past defenders and make everything a big play. They're going into the running backs, though. Eric Gray is the more of the shifty back that they have. They have another running back, Kennedy Brooks. So Kennedy Brooks is their power back, their guy that's going to run you over. Whereas Eric Gray is going to be their quick playmaker. He's shifty. He's able to get out. He's able to get out tackles. And I believe that he will have a bigger game this game with like screen passes, with play actions and stuff. He's the better catching running back. He's the better catch and run kind of guy. And I believe that they will utilize that a lot against our defense. Getting onto the defense, they run a similar scheme to Nebraska. They call it the speed D, but it's a hybrid 3-4. It's similar to what Nebraska runs. Just again, they have a lot of talented guys all over the field. They have a lot of quick guys all over the field. They would rather go with the speed element rather than the power element, and that seems to pay off in some cases. They've been said to be better than the previous years, but they are still a Big 12 defense, so they're not so much big guys trying to stop you or physically manhandle you. The Big 12 is mostly offense, so you're trying to stop just this high-powered offense all the time, whereas like Nebraska's defense is more to stop like a power game as opposed to like an air raid offense. But they do have, technically, they have better stats than they have in the past few years, but they've also played lesser opponents than, I mean, it's only been 2 games. So we really don't have a ton of stats to go off of against quality opponents. So, I mean, that'll be something you see. Their thing is similar to ours as well. It's not so much a shutdown defense style. I mean, they did shut out their last team, but it was an FCS opponent. But they don't so much shut you down as they do disrupt you and then try to get turnovers off turnovers off of that, which is, again, what Nebraska tries to do, I think. It's what UCF tried to do, and they did it successfully. I believe that's what Nebraska tries to do. I believe that's what Oklahoma's trying to do. I mentioned before that there was a lot of parallels between the two programs, and this was another one that I've seen. They have 3 linemen, defensive linemen, and then they have a nickel, and then they have another guy on the other side who typically will blitz in as well. But I mean, all of their guys are constantly shifting, changing coverage. You don't know who's doing what necessarily, and that is to confuse the quarterback to disrupt that kind of thing. He might not remember that there's a linebacker that drifts back, and so he might throw picks that way. There could be a guy he doesn't realize is going to blitz in, but he blitzes in. There's just a ton of shifting and movement on the defensive side, and that's what the purpose is to disrupt. Although their corners haven't really been tested, I did watch a few of the corners, and they were getting burned by okay receivers. But they haven't really gone up against anybody quick, anybody quality, anybody big. And I keep using the word big when it comes to the Nebraska side of the ball. And that's because during coach interviews and stuff this week, that's been a comment that's been brought up over and over again, is how big our guys are, and that this will be a test for Oklahoma's defense, for Oklahoma's offense, to see if they can go up against guys that are our size. To their defensive side, the notable players on the defensive side, they have a lot of seniors. They do have a lot of seniors and juniors all over the field, both on offense and defense. So they have good depth all over the place as well. But the 3 guys I'm going to bring up on the defensive side are all seniors. The safety, Darien Turner. If I'm butchering these names, I apologize as well. But Darien Turner Yell, he leads the team in tackles. He's their safety. He looked like he was keeping everything from blowing up into a bigger play. So anything that was down below him, he was coming in and making the tackle, which is why he has so many. But nothing really got past him. So he's quality as far as containing big plays, and that's going to be something that we will have to work with if we do want to make those explosive big plays. We need to be able to break tackles and then also get past him. Whether that be through coverage, whether that be through design pass plays that kind of pick him off. There has to be some way to get around these safeties, because like I said, they run that 3-4. So there's a lot of corners. There's a lot of backs that are going to be dropping back into coverage. But you're going to have those safeties back there all the time. The other 2 notable players I want to talk about on defense is their defensive linemen. They have 2 seniors, Isaiah Thomas and Perion Winfrey. They both have 2 sacks each. And Isaiah Thomas has 2 forced fumbles, but listening to the coaches and stuff, a lot of them, and a lot of the players too, they believe that this is going to be a breakout game for Perion Winfrey. He was just getting warmed up in those first 2 games from the sounds of it. Not to hype your guy up, but they said that the way he is progressing between the first 2 games will lead him to have a big game this game. So that's just a name to watch out for this game. Perion Winfrey, he's a defensive lineman. Going on special teams, there's not a ton to go off of here because they haven't been punting. They did kick 6 field goals this year, and their kicker, Gabe Burkick, again, not sure how to pronounce that. He's 5 of 6 this year for field goals. He is 4 for 4 on 50-plus yard field goals, which is a crazy stat to look at compared to our kicking woes that we've had this year. But I mean, he's solid. He's not going to miss. So given the chance to take field goals, which they might early on just to get points on the board, might kick field goals. We, on the other hand, are going to have to try to go for touchdowns quite often. But yeah, they only have 1 punt so far that I could find this year, which means their offense scores a lot. They're not punting the ball. They're not getting shut down on defense. So that's going to be a concern. Can we stop them and make them punt at all? Is going to be a thing to watch for on Saturday. But as far as their kickoffs after they score, 1 out of every 4 has been fielded this year. So maybe that'll give a chance for some return yards. We haven't gotten to see a bunch of return yards this year because they've either been fumbled or they've been fair caught or they've gone out of the end zone. So there's a 25% chance you'll be able to take the ball and see what you can do with it. But given our special teams, we will see how that goes. So keys to the game. So the defense, the last 2 games I've been saying, last 3 games I've been saying that the offensive line is our biggest area of concern, and that needs to be the first key to winning the game. I'm going to switch that up a little bit this week and say that the defense is going to be more important. because they have such a high-powered offense. The offensive line is going to be important, yes, but if the defense can't hold Oklahoma to completely blowing us apart, completely scoring 70 points on us, then it doesn't matter what our offensive line does if the defense can't hold them down. So the defense is, in my eyes, going to be the most important element of this game. The corners are going to be tested against the most talent that they're going to see all year, besides maybe Ohio State. Cam Taylor-Britt specifically, I believe that they're going to put their best receiver on him just to test him. And, I mean, any of our corners are going to get tested. Doesn't matter where they are on the field. Our linebackers are going to get tested across the middle. It's just going to be, everybody's going to get tested against a level of talent that they haven't gone up against often or at all this year so far, but like often even throughout the previous years. The defensive line and the linebackers are both going to have to kill the rushing game in its tracks. We cannot allow them to establish a rushing game and then line up to pass the ball. Like I mentioned, Spencer Rattler is mobile. He can get out, and he has like he has a top 5 completion rate as far as getting out of the pocket on a play action or a scramble and making a pass down the field. Adrian, if the pocket breaks down and he gets out, he typically will take off if there's a lane. Spencer Rattler is really good at keeping his eyes downfield and trying to pass as much as he can. So I believe he has something like a 90% completion rate out of the pocket. If he gets scrambled out of the pocket, or if it is a designed play action run, he has a 90% completion rate out of that. And they do that quite often from what I was seeing. And given our defense, and I hope that we get pressure on the quarterback, I can see them using that a lot more. Screen passes and just dump passes out of the pocket. Which again, I keep mentioning parallels. I believe that a lot of their game plan is going to be similar to what our game plan would have to be to win. Our defense is going to have to step up and be able to stop their offense, or at least limit it. I don't see us completely shutting down Oklahoma's offense, but I do think that we have the ability and the talent in the right places on our skill guys to be able to slow them down. I believe on their side of the ball, their defense is their weak spot. Their offense is obviously killer. They're can put up big points, but their defense is the area of concern that they've dealt with for the past few years. The defense is what has allowed other teams to hang with them, and that's what gets them in trouble. But on our side of the ball again, so it's sticking to our keys for success. We do need to have the rushing game needs to be shut down. We cannot allow them to get big yards. We can't allow them to gash us. God, I'm getting tongue twisted here. We can't allow them to gash us for big running yards. We can't allow 20, 30 yard, rips off the line of scrimmage. And to do that, we need to make sure that we're tackling the dudes. I think that different coaches have brought up that once you go from one level of opponent to a level of opponent like Oklahoma, where they have just like speed, the fast guys, it's kind of a shock to your system. Your timing's a little off as far as tackling goes. So you're not wrapping up correctly, or you're not wrapping up quickly enough, and they're just able to run right through you. So we need to make sure we're shoring up our tackling, which to our credit, we have been doing really well this year, I believe. We don't have a lot of guys just going with their shoulder and trying to knock somebody over. They're wrapping up as well, and they're stopping guys in their tracks, and that's what you want to see. On the flip side of that, their defense has not been doing that. Their defense has not been great on tackling this year, and they haven't played guys our size or our speed or our power yet. So I'm hoping that that's an area for us to be able to take advantage of. But on our side of it, we need to make sure that we are keeping that under control. I mentioned them using play action and screen passes quite a bit, or at least using them effectively. Our linebackers are going to be tested quite a bit in that area. They're going to be tested both on stopping the rush game and being in charge of controlling those passes over the middle and to the outside. Luke Reimers, I believe he's going to have a big game again. He had a big one last week. And then Henrich is going to have a big game as well. He actually leads the team in total tackles, but those two dudes are inside linebackers specifically. Their closing speed is really impressive. This is the most confidence I've had in a linebacking course since maybe like Levante David was there. And I don't even know who else was back there with Levante David, but like you had trust in your linebackers to solidify that center of the field. Then it's kind of reliant on your corners to effectively keep the wide receivers from busting open big plays, and then it's all on your defensive line to get pressure, which, again, I trust our linebackers to solidify that center of the field. Our defensive line needs to be able to get pressure through their line. They do tend to have, from what I've seen, like 6 to 7 blockers per play when they're passing it. And we only run the 3, down linemen. We do have the nickel and another linebacker that will blitz in, and we run a corner blitz quite often, it seems. But I mean, that's still going to be a mismatch as far as numbers go. So Darien Daniels is going to have a big game where he's punching through that center and disrupting the play right from the beginning. The quarterback doesn't have anywhere to go if you cut the middle of the field in half. So Darien Daniels comes busting through the middle. He has to go left or he has to go right, and that's going to disrupt his whole. He's not going to be able to have eyes down the field. That's just going to disrupt the play from the get-go. But we need to be able to get pressure with the defensive linemen and with the nickel linebackers and with the guys that's coming blitzing in. We can't afford to not get pressure and give him all day to throw it, because he will throw it accurately, which I mentioned. He's not going to miss a ton of passes, and if you give him time, his wide receivers are going to get open because they are such skilled guys. So we need to be able to get pressure with 4 or 5 guys going in. That way we can allow the other guys to be able to run that coverage on the pass plays. If we can get through with 4 or 5 guys, that's great. That allows our other players to be able to, one, it allows us to get to the quarterback a little quicker, to where he doesn't have a ton of time and he has to get rid of the ball quickly, which will lead to him making more mistakes, which he has done. Watching his game against Tulane, when he gets hurried, if he has a setup play action or if he has someone to pass it off to, that's fine. If he doesn't make great decisions. He tries to, one of his interceptions he threw into triple coverage. There was no reason to throw it there, but his brain got scrambled. He didn't know what to do. He threw it. He trusted his guy a little too much, or he trusted his arm a little too much. But we get him in those positions. Get him in those positions where he has to make a quick decision, and you don't give him time to think. And Darien Daniels busting up the middle right in your face is a good way to do that. I believe that a lot of the D linemen with their size are going to have a good game. I have a lot of faith in the defense. I don't think they're going to shut Oklahoma down. Again, I said that, but I feel like they're going to be able to be disruptive. They're going to be able to get turnovers, hopefully, and they're going to be able to just be disruptive to begin with. They're not going to allow Oklahoma to just run up and down the field on them. That being said, now we move to the offensive line. This has been my area of concern for the last few games. Even going into last season, the offensive line has been an issue. And this season, I mentioned that we had a junior on the team, no seniors. We have 1 junior, and the rest of them are underclassmen. I didn't realize the junior didn't have any college snaps before this year. I thought he was a 3-year junior who has had playtime before, but apparently this is his first year playing at all in games. That's not great to hear. That explains some of the trouble we've had. But I was reading somewhere, the Pro Football Focus, they do like the grading scale for offensive linemen. Cam Jurgens in the middle has like an 83, 84, 85, somewhere in there. He's doing really well this year, but it trickles off of him. So you go from Cam Jurgens to the guards that have like 60%, grade. And then the tackles on the outside are just horrendous. One is like a 42 and one's like a 39. They're just not doing their jobs, and they're all young. They're all going to have room to grow. But when it comes to a game like this, where they're going to have those big defensive linemen that I mentioned, not big so much as like none of their defensive linemen are over 300 pounds. All of our offensive linemen are. That gives them a size advantage. But I've also mentioned that the last few games that we've had a size advantage and we just haven't been able to use it. They're going to be quick. They're going to be quick off the ball. They're going to get up under your pads. They're going to push you back. So you need to be able to use your weight and be able to push them back or get off the ball a little quicker and push them back into the linebackers to give your running backs room to run. They need to establish that run game, which is the same thing I've been spouting off all year. And we've been trying. We've been prioritizing the run game, but we just don't have as much time as we do this game to run 40 run passes or run. I think we ran 40 last week. Ran 40 run plays last week, and they just weren't successful. We need to be able to run plays where they're actually a threat, and that all starts with the offensive line. I mentioned that they didn't have any defensive linemen over 292, and I did mention that their coaches and the analyst for Oklahoma. So I keep saying Ohio State. Oklahoma's analyst. So I listen. There's a lot of like podcasts and stuff surrounding Nebraska where they listen to the keys. They listen the skill players that we have on our side. I went and listened to a bunch of Sooners games to see what they're worried about on Nebraska's side. And almost across the board, they were worried about our size. They were worried about not necessarily that we were the greatest corners or that we had the best linebackers or that our defensive linemen were the most skilled guys. but their size is going to be an issue. You're not used to running up against guys that size when you're in the Big 12. And they said that this is the best looking team that they're going to see all year. Not best skill wise, not best depth wise, but best as far as like that guy looks like he could be in the NFL as a corner. That guy looks like he's going to be in the NFL as a lineman. They just have big physical guys on their team. And that was something that I heard over and over again. So I think that they truly are, the coaches are truly worried about the size of our guys being an issue. So we need to make it an issue. Our offensive lineman needs to be able to hold and give Adrian time. If they can give Adrian time, I believe that we are going to have success in our passing game, just based off of their corners' performance in the first 2 games that they've played. Their corners are going to get burned, especially if we get guys back. I know we have a lot of injuries out, but okay. So this is Friday. Today is Friday. I tried to put these out a little earlier on Friday, or at least on Thursday. I had an episode lined up for Wednesday, but I wanted to see what the injury report looked like. And Scott Frost, as usual, doesn't talk about the injuries. So I pushed it back. Today we got to see some the guys getting off the bus. They landed in, or they got in Norman. Seeing them get off the bus. Scott Frost did mention that since it's not a conference game, even though it's away, we're able to take more guys. I believe 85 was the number. Then if it was a conference game, you have a limit on how many guys you can take with you. But Omar Manning was one of the 85. So they're not going to take a guy that's not going to play unless it's some kind of mind game where they're just showing his face so that the other team prepares for him. But if we can get Omar Manning back, if we can get Betts back, the speed guy on the outside, to make the corners work for it, to potentially get the separation that Adrian has down the field, that's going to be huge for us. But the offensive line has to give him time to throw, has to give the wide receivers time to get through their routes. Our routes tend to be a little slower developing. We typically have a dump guy, whether that be the wide running back doing a wheel route or some guy running across the middle. We have a dump route usually, but to be able to give Toure time to get open or Betts to get time to get open, Omar Manning has a big potential, if he does play, to make a big impact this game. Just with his size, just with his ability to get the ball. This is going to be a big game for us overall, but it's all going to start with the offensive line. They need to be able to hold. Same thing I've been saying all year. Hopefully we have the size advantage, obviously, but hopefully we also have an advantage as far as experience goes against the 3-4 defense. I mentioned that they play a similar defense that we do. The only difference is that they play it with quicker guys, but they're smaller. So I'm hoping that the fact that we've gone up against a lot of the schemes, there's going to be differences, obviously, with personnel and stuff, but for the most part, we've gone against the 3-4 defense and a lot of variations of it, to the point where hopefully that plays into our offensive line being able to recognize what's going on. Adrian, giving him time to recognize what's going on. His ability to run the options and run pass options, knowing whether to give it off to the running back or to take it himself. Hopefully all of this experience against the 3-4 in practice is going to pay off, because these are smaller guys. These are going to be guys we should be able to run through as running backs. We should be able to get past his corners. We should be able to get up and get the ball if it's jump ball. But it's all going to start with the offensive line. Again, I mean, I beat that thing to death, but that's just how it is. Third thing, I think we need to minimize penalties and capitalize on the fact they are going to make penalties as well. They do have 13 penalties for 111 yards this year. That's not great compared to what we have. I mean, we have about the same, but they're not a clean team. They're not in Northwestern where they're going to be playing, a perfect game. They're going to make mistakes. If we can limit ours and then allow them to make their own mistakes and capitalize on them, that will be just wonderful. Also, it seems like, I'm not sure what it is exactly, but it seems like when we do make mistakes, they are crucial and game killers. We cannot do that. We cannot have a crucial penalty or turn the ball over, on a big quarter. The second quarter, for instance, keeps getting brought up. Second quarter, Oklahoma has scored 51-0 with their opponents. They've outscored their opponents 51-0. The second quarter seems to be a thing that a lot of people are worried about. So if we can come out in the second quarter and hold them to a low-scoring quarter, but then go out there and score ourselves, and then come out in the third quarter and then hopefully do the same thing, I believe the second and third quarters are going to be the most crucial for us to get a chance to win the game, or at least a chance to be competitive. I usually only do 3 of these. I usually only do 3 keys for success, but there has to be 4 this week because it's such a big week, which is why I did so much research, which is why it's coming out late on Friday. But Adrian Martinez has to have a big game, maybe the biggest game of his career. But he has to at least, at the very least, be solid. He cannot be forcing turnovers, which people jump on him for the amount of turnovers he's had, which interceptions and bad mistakes I can see. But a lot of his fumbles, if he's not trying to make the running play, if he's too afraid to run because he's afraid to fumble, that's going to be a confidence thing. But he does need to know when to tuck it. So, I mean, that could play into it. But like the fumble against Illinois where they ran it back for 6, I'm not going to put that on Adrian. The offensive line let guys go, let guys through, hit him, and he dropped it. That's going to happen when you have a mobile quarterback. That's kind of the trade-off. You're going to have big plays where he's going to be able to use his legs to get you yards, get you first downs, get you touchdowns, but he's also going to have a bigger chance to turn the ball over. But he needs to be able to recognize when the right time to run is, when to tuck it for sure, when there's pressure around him, because the offensive line, hopefully they can hold, but they're not going to be able to hold forever. So hopefully he can feel the pocket. Pocket presence is a very big thing. And he's smart with his progressions. So when he is going through his progressions, he's not trying to force a ball where it doesn't need to be. Their guys are just way too athletic, way too skilled to not make accurate passes, to throw it behind your receivers or to throw it high above your receivers, which he does. That's kind of his Achilles heel, is he throws it high a lot. Their guys are just way too skilled and quick. They're going to pick one of those off. They're going to make you pay with that. So he needs to be smart in his progressions. He cannot be turning the ball over. He needs to be smart in his reads as far as handing the ball off or to take it himself, especially if we run the option. We've been running the triple option a lot, and I'm not sure if that's because we plan on using it in this game or because we were trying to get them to plan for it and we don't ever use it. But I can't imagine that we wouldn't use the option. It sounds like we practice it a lot, and it seems to be effective. So he just needs to be smart as far as his plays go. Don't try to force something. Just take the safe yards. And I did mention that the play actions and the screens are going to be effective for both teams. But specifically, I believe that they're going to be effective watching Oklahoma's defense and how terrible they were at screens and play actions. They bit on play actions really hard, and then their corners were too soft, and then they just gave up a big play. So I'm hoping that Adrian can have one of the best games of his career. I've tweeted out that I would love to see him go for 350 total yards and 4 touchdowns. I mean, that would silence a lot of his critiques. That would silence a lot of things, which I believe he is unfairly critiqued for. But if he could have a huge game, I mean, not necessarily that we win. If he could have a big game, that would be such a big confidence boost for him. That'd be such a big confidence boost for the offense. That would be such a big confidence boost for our program as a whole. That these things can pay off. And it's not all on him, but a lot of this weight is on his shoulders. And he knows that as a leader of the team, as a captain on the team, as a guy who's been here for so long. He's been with Scott Frost since the beginning, and the whole season kind of rides on him right now. Not the season. The game specifically does. The season, people could say it does or whether it does or not, but I don't think the whole season rides on this game, but I think that a large portion of the momentum going forward is going to see how we play. If we come in here and we compete and we run it all the way down to the fourth quarter with them and we keep pace with a top 4 team, that's going to have a lot to do. That's going to be well for going forward in our schedule. That's going to play really well as far as we can run with anybody at that point. So my expectations for the game, I do want to mention that the Big Ten did make a statement about the pick play where we got called for offensive pass interference and the forward pass on the option play with the 10 seconds left. Those were the 2 big ones that I griped on the recap for the Buffalo game. And they said that the offensive pass interference should not have been played or should not have been called. And they also did not see anything wrong with the play. And then the forward pass should not have been called anyway, period. So that's 14 points on the board that we should have, which would give us, instead of the 28-3 victory, it would give us a 42-3 victory, which is a big difference as far as stats go, as far as how people perceive our win over Buffalo. A lot of people said that, it was pretty close. They hung with you for a while. That would have made a huge difference as far as the perception of Nebraska beating Buffalo, which is a good team in the MAC. I mean, that's not like a pushover team. They are not as good. They're not as skilled as, Nebraska is. But in a game we should have won, we won it convincingly, if not for the officiating. So I just wanted to just wanted to clear that up. I'm surprised that they made a statement at all, but to see that they did that was nice to go back and see that we would have had a 42-3 victory over Buffalo. Expectations and thoughts on the game. We cannot start the game slowly on either side of the ball, whether they get the ball first or we get the ball first. Our offense has to start out quick, getting consistent first downs. I think that's going to be the biggest thing for us. People have been making a big talk about game management. If we're going to run a lot, try to run the clock out every play, run the play clock down every play, just to try to shorten the game, give them less offensive snaps, keep the game close. Or if we should run with tempo, and that's more of our strength on our offense, to run with tempo, to, just try to score, play our version of the game. I do think it's probably a mistake to try to get in a foot race with Oklahoma's offense, but I do think you need to play to your strengths as a football team. But we can't have a slow start on either side. We can't let the defense, try to figure things out in the first quarter, or they will go up 21 points in the first quarter. They need to be focused and be able to get pressure on him from the first quarter, which if you go back to the Illinois game, we got most of our sacks this year. Most of our sacks this year, we got 3 in the first quarter against Illinois. So if we could do that again, if we can get pressure on him from the beginning and rattle him from the beginning, that's going to be a great start to the defense. If we get the ball first, we need to be able to drive down the field consistently, slowly, getting those first downs, keeping the clock going, but still keeping tempo. So instead of going for these big plays, which you mix in there, you still want to mix in the big dynamic plays. Go for these short down passes, go for these short runs, go for these short option plays where you're getting 4 or 5 chunks at a time, but you're getting these first downs and keeping the clock going. I do truly feel like that's the way to go, not to try to have all these explosive plays, but instead get these first downs. I mentioned this last week. We got 19 first downs. I don't think that's enough. I think you need to have more consistency, drive to drive, as opposed to we have one big explosive scoring drive and then we have 2 3-and-outs. I just feel like first downs are going to be vital in this game. That'll be very telling at the end of the game who had more first downs. Just going to be how it is. People have made a big deal about the rivalry playing a role in the game. I don't feel like it is a big role as far as the players go. Most of them were 7 to 8 the last time we played. I mentioned the last time we played was 2010. A lot of these guys were 7 or 8 years old. A lot of them aren't from Nebraska or Oklahoma or anywhere where anybody remembers the 70s or the 90s. Our fan bases, this is a huge thing. Our fan bases, this is a great deal of nostalgia. This is a great thing to look back on and see how it's impacted college football in general, this rivalry. But as far as the players go, as far as you being on the field on a third down with the quarterback across from you, you're not thinking about, that one cool play in 1971, where Johnny Rodgers returned a punt. You're not thinking about the 1990s where Nebraska finally turned the tide and just crushed Oklahoma every year, except for once. I think we lost in 1990, maybe. But we crushed them in the 90s. So, that's not things that the players are thinking about now because they're too young to remember any of that history. They're only here for the now, which should be how it is. We play game to game. Every game's a different game. Every game needs to be a win. On the field, they're not thinking of the past. They're not thinking of these great giants that used to play all the time. That's more for the fans. That's more for the coaches, specifically Scott Frost. He was a fan before he was a player, and now he's a coach, all in this rivalry, which I think is a cool, aspect to look at for him. But I just don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. As far as it might give them some motivation, it might give them, a little extra oomph when they're getting tired and they're like, no, there's a big history here. Maybe then when they have time to sit on the sideline and think about it. But during the game, in the moment, that's not going to be playing in their mind. And a lot of people, both on the Sooner side of the ball, and so Sooner fans, I got the impression that they really don't think we're a good team. That they are looking at the overall history of Scott Frost and all the way back into Mike Riley. Nebraska's lost it. There's no reason, they're going to come in here, we're going to stomp them, which a good fan base should do. You should have superior confidence in your team. And nationally, I think it's the same thing. Nationally, and ESPN and Sports Center and things like that, they're talking about how Nebraska's going to come into Oklahoma and get stomped. And I feel like that's a big reason why I mentioned on Twitter, also at Cobsmacked Pod. on Twitter. I wasn't seeing a ton of like, hey, what game are you looking forward to? I wasn't seeing a ton of Nebraska, Oklahoma. I was seeing, all these other games going on across college football. And I thought that's kind of odd being as big of a rivalry as this is. But then looking at it outside, this is a big rivalry for us in the Midwest, but it's not really that big anywhere else. We've kind of fallen off. We haven't played them in 11 years. So it's something that I feel like their fan base is looking down on us because it's been so long, and we are, hoping we're going to sneak one in. We're hoping that they're taking, us for granted, that they're underestimating us, or overestimating their abilities. I don't think that coach to coach, that's what's going on. I don't think Lincoln Riley's looking at this and he's underestimating us. I think and listening to him talk and listening to their defensive coordinator talk about Nebraska, they recognize that we have a ton of good guys, and they said, I think they said point blank that we are better than what our record shows. That we are better than how the seasons have been going. We just haven't got it to click. Eventually, one of these times, it's going to click, and they don't want to be the team that it clicks on. So, I don't think that they're overlooking Nebraska in the least bit. I think that a lot of the fans think that they are. A lot of the fans think that this is going to be an easy game as far as Sooner side goes. A lot of fans think that we're going to be able to squeak a win out because they're underestimating us, but I don't think so. All I can say is that I'm hoping for a competitive game. I'm hoping for a game that will be able to be notched into the rivalry when you look back on it in 15 years and say that this was another game where both teams play their asses off, and that would be perfect. I would love to see a competitive Nebraska play a competitive Oklahoma. I don't want to see one team throw the game away. I want to see one team win it. Another expectation, every week I say the same thing, is our size. Their coaches noted it. Our coaches noted it. Everybody knows the same thing. We need to be physical and aggressive and use our size as the big, chunky Big Ten guys. Final prediction, we'll get right into it. So I'm going long here. Jesus, I wasn't expecting to talk this long. Final prediction, I'm going to be optimistic. I'm going to say 41-38 Nebraska. We're going to squeak one out. I don't think they're going to be surprised, but I think that our defense is going to be able to hold them more than they think they are, and that they're going to make a mistake somewhere that we need to capitalize on. I'm being optimistic. Offense needs to get up to a quick start, as I mentioned, tempo, but don't give the ball back. Keep making those consistent first downs. Don't make the game any longer than it has to be, but be able to score. Keep the game at your pace. The defense needs to be off the field as much as possible. We can't keep punting it to them and keeping the defense on the field for 80 snaps, 90 snaps. We need to keep them off the field because they do have a ton of depth on their side, and all of their depth is viable. We only have the 85 guys. We do have some depth on defense. As opposed to our offensive side, we have more depth on the defensive side, but we're going to get tired if we're on the field that long. So we need to keep them off the field as much as possible, and limit the fatigue that will be playing off in the third and fourth quarter. Special teams needs to be solid. I didn't bring that up very much in this, but obviously our special teams has been horrendous. We can't afford poor punts and can't afford to be giving them good field position every time. They're already at advantage with their offense. We can't give them any more than they should get. And we obviously can't be turning over the ball. I did want to mention, though, I am being optimistic with my prediction. That was something that's been fluctuating all week. The beginning of the week, it was more of a realistic expectations. I've been seeing that a lot on Twitter, a lot on Facebook, a lot on YouTube, being the realistic fan. And I wanted to address that a little bit because it is something that I go through every week. Monday, I start out more logical, but my fan, I think of it as a balloon. On Saturdays where we win, it just continues to balloon up. So we've won 2 in a row. The balloon hasn't popped yet. When we lose, it pops. I start over, blow up the next balloon. So Mondays typically are very logical. I'm talking about being very critical of the team. Not negative, but critical of the team, which is fine. You should be critical of the team. But throughout the week, that balloon inflates until Friday. I'm like, we could win this. There's no reason we couldn't, which I believe is how fans should look at the game. It's okay to be logical and critical of the stats after the game, of the areas that you need to improve on, of the areas and stats that you think we could do better on. That's fine. You be logical, be critical, because that's how you improve as a team. But as far as a fan should go, I think we should see the team not for what is it. Okay, restart. As a fan, I don't think we should see the team for what it has done so far. I think we should look at the team as, based on what they've shown us, what is their potential? What is their best version of themselves? if your team goes out and gets stomped by 76 points every game, obviously by the end of the year, your potential is probably not great, but you're still going to be rooting that they hit that potential. We're not rooting that they, go on to win the national championship right now. That's not where Nebraska is as a program. I am hoping that they hit their potential. I'm hoping that they make massive strides as far as a program goes. So as a fan, I'm not looking to see them play a perfect game. I'm looking for them to maximize their potential and to hit it. Some fan bases get to see their teams play to their potential. Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, they've all had moments in the last decade where they've played to their potential and the fan base is just full of joy. And that brings you so much joy as a fan to put faith in a program, and they repay you essentially with, reaching their potential. If a fan base completely gives up hope on a team reaching their potential, then what motivation does that give that group of 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds? Like, why even try? If you don't believe in me, if there's nobody backing me, yes, I could try for myself, but it's so much easier when you have a group of people that believe in you as a young man, as a young individual, even as you're growing up, kids. Imagine if that was your kid. Imagine you wouldn't go watch your kid play high school football, and the moment he makes a mistake, you're like trashing him. He needs to get pulled. That coach needs fired, whatever the case may be. You go there every week and you watch your high school kid get the crap beat out of him every game when you live in Columbus, Nebraska. Because it's your kid and you support your kid. You support the team your kid chooses to play for. It's crushing to watch them get beat. It's crushing to watch them get beat over and over again. But when they finally make that turn, when they finally, make improvements game to game, and you're watching these individuals like improve as a player, that should bring you some sense of joy. And I feel like a lot of the fan base has lost that. A lot of the fan base is bickering on social medias and in person. I deliver mail. I talk to a lot of fan base, different areas of the fan base. We have a lot of guys that think we're going to get blown out, and a lot of guys that think that we could possibly win this. And they seem to butt heads. You can't have both opinions. You can't say we could possibly lose, but I think we could win. I just don't feel like you should shame somebody for having faith in a team. That's kind of like the job as of a fan, is to have faith in a team. If you don't have faith in the program that they're going to reach a potential, then I think maybe you are more of a fan of college football than you are of the team that you are claiming to support. And I choose to believe that Nebraska can reach its potential, and it will this Saturday. Whether that's right or wrong, that's my opinion. So that'll wrap up this week's preview. We will be back here on Sunday for a recap of the game. Hopefully it's a good one. What do you think? Is it going to be a blowout, or is it going to be a fist fight between two old-time rivals that are going to go back into their glory days, and the next few times we play it, it'll be a top 4 matchup? This one, like I mentioned, was all over the place Monday to Friday. It was all over the place. So leave a comment below on what you think, or you can let me know on Twitter again at Cobsmacked Pod on Twitter. I do stream on these shadows, but I've been slacking because I've been working on the podcast so much, because I'm doing so much research, because I love this time of year. So anyway, until next time, go Big Red.